Right. I'm Jo. I live in Halifax. Um, I was diagnosed with as autistic when I was 60, after a sort of life full of mental health struggles, and it helps me to make sense of a lot of things. Um, in relation to time, I guess it's something that has woven itself through my life. I think when I was younger, I saw time as quite flexible, not very specific. And if I was, say, if I was working on um, some work for college, I felt like I could stretch time. I know that my perception of time is different from other people. Certainly in terms of work, um, I struggle with deadlines. Um, and then you'll have a boss that gives you another deadline, another deadline, another deadline. And it just doesn't work because time isn't the same. You can be working towards something, and I find it very difficult to judge how long something will take. And I'll have a perception that it might take me a day, it might take me 3 days. Um, so in that way, it's really difficult with work. And also another thing that I found recently, somebody said, get something to me by the end of play on Wednesday. Now, my end of play was when I finished the work on Wednesday, which was about 9:30. Their end of play, I think, was probably about 5 o'clock, so they could do something with it. So it's one of those things that you realise it's a mixture of time and language and communication makes things quite difficult with things like work. Um, it also affects sort of personal relationships in a way. My partner, um, he's got his own conditions, and he will see um, if I'm 5 minutes late. To him, that'll feel like an hour, but to me, it'll feel like nothing. So I might end up being half an hour late for something and not even realise, and that can be really distressing for somebody else because they might think that you're not taking them seriously or not um, being honest with them, when actually in your head you're doing the right thing. So there are lots of little kind of things that can trip you up with time, either at work or personally. Um, and I've tried some different sort of strategies, things like timers, the Pomodoro technique absolutely do not work. I can put timers on my computer, on my phone, and they're just invisible. So if it's appointments, I'll tend to get things early if I can, because I'm aware that otherwise I'll be late, but I do end up running late an awful lot of time. And then that makes you panic. And I guess it's crazy because it's a pattern that keeps repeating itself. You know, you'd have to trying to get pieces of work in on time, things like that. It's so frustrating that you can't rely on yourself because your perception of time is all skewed. So you're aware that other people might end up feeling that you're unreliable, even when you're trying really hard to do something. But you also have that intense frustration in yourself that you can't do things in this framework that other people expect you to, that to them seems perfectly normal and reasonable, but it just doesn't fit in your head.
Hello, I'm Simon, and today I'm going to give a short thing on my perception of time as an autistic person. It's both complicated and simple at the same time because my perception of time vanishes if I become deeply focused. I'm very time oriented when I'm not. I have to know what the time is all the time, and so on and so forth. But when I get focused into a book or a movie or a computer game, I can go for hours completely focused, and not notice the change in time. It's got to the stage where I might know what time it is, but I don't know what day it is. A good example of this, when I was much younger, I managed to read my way through the entire Hobbit and Lord of the Rings saga in 18 hours, just by becoming that focused. I only stopped when I didn't have enough light left to read the page. And I think this is something that autistic people, especially if they're interested, are particularly good at, is just losing track of everything else and becoming laser focused on one thing. The downside of that is that we can lose whole days and weeks doing it.
My name's David Wright, and to do with the project and study, I just want to talk a little bit about a few examples that I've perhaps had through my life relating to time and what time means to me and how it can affect me. So for me, if I have appointments, meetings, things like that, I'm very punctual with them. That's something that I've always have been, and it's something that's a bit of a necessity for me. So if I'm a little bit late for something, that can have after effects with me. And the way that tends to be is I'll either see like patterns in my vision, and in my vision it can be like dots or flashing lights and stuff like that. I have been to my optician to see if it was a problem with my vision. It's not. My vision's 20/20. Who knew? So they have put it down that it's related to my anxiety, and obviously anxiety and autism, they go hand in hand with each other. So that's the thing that the charity that supports me are very aware of, so that they know to give me as much warning or notice as they can to any changes, so that it's easy for me to deal with. I hate being late, hate it, as in it can make me sick. Also, I don't like to let people down, so that if I know someone is expecting me, I like to be there for them. Aids to help me with times in things like this. Some things that I do is if it's somewhere I've never been before, and I'll use a prime example of Manchester University because it's as good as any. I've been involved with a few studies at the university, and the first time I went where the study was taking place at the university, I'd never been before. So obviously that was a concern for me, because you've never been before, so you don't want to be late for it, you don't want to let people down there. What can you do? What can I do to alleviate those worries and be better prepared for the day? So normally things that I do is I'll research it. So I'll look up sort of points of interest for the journey along the way to look out for, so that I have an idea of how long the journey is going to take, and to keep an eye out for things so I know where I'm at. I tend to like to arrange dummy runs in advance as well. So a couple of days before, I might ask my support worker if we can actually go to the place, so that we're at least familiar with the surroundings, what the reception looks like, who might be working on the reception, just so there's a degree of familiarity there, so that rather than going in completely cold, I've touched base a little bit, if that makes sense. Some scary things have happened with me as well. I've always worked in education, so schools, colleges, universities, I've worked in them all. And I've always been the computer technician. So when the computers are broken, David, your job to fix them. And I was hired for a job once, and I was offered the position, and they basically said to me, you're in charge, it's your show, you rule the roost. So I did the preparations, got into the school, and I was in the school for about 2 weeks. And at the end of the 2 weeks, they basically turned around to me and said, there's no job here, clear your desk. And they literally just said, as in, they didn't even say leave at the end of the day. It was a case of, you're done. There's the door. And this was at 10:30 in the morning. And I left the building, and there was a park that was nearby the school. And I sat down at this park, and as I say, it was about 10:30 in the morning. And when I next looked at the time, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I have absolutely no idea where that time went, but it scares the hell out of me. And thankfully, situations like that have only happened a few times. But before my diagnosis, obviously, I always thought, you know, why do you struggle with such things? Why is it such a difficulty? Whereas when it was diagnosed with autism, it kind of explained things a little bit and gave me a better understanding to know, well, actually, you know, you do have a difficulty. This is what it is, and this is why time can affect you. Only happened a few times, but I think that's basically when things have peaked, when they've spiked, and it's not like a blackout, or it's not a losing of consciousness. It's literally as though someone has switched me off, just like that, you know, and then there's nothing, absolutely nothing. And thankfully, it's only happened a few times, and the few times it's happened, nothing bad has happened, as in, you know, I've not been mugged, I've not been attacked. I've literally just been sat there in my own space. And I think it's when my mind can't deal with something or can't process, that's what happens, because it just doesn't know what to do, so it just turns off. And I think it's basically like hitting the reset on a switch on a computer.
Okay, so my name's Claire. I'm the mum of 3 kids, and my middle son, Johnny, is 12 and he's autistic. Johnny's struggle with time is absolutely enormous, and it doesn't seem to be getting any easier for him. So I really want to find ways to sort of help him understand time a bit better, and that's everything from looking at an analog clock to understanding that when he gets in bed at the end of the day, it's still the day that he's just experienced, because he'll get in bed and he'll talk about what happened yesterday, but he's actually referring to the day that's just passed. He doesn't understand how long. He gets very distressed about going out anywhere, because he doesn't understand how long we're going to be there, how long it's going to take, when he can get back in time to go back on his electronics, which makes him feel really relaxed. And we've used time timers, we've used egg timers, we've used digital clocks, we've used boards, timetables, everything, and we're better, it's better, but we're still struggling quite a lot. Maths absolutely blows his mind, fractions, parts of things, doubling things, quantities, and I suppose that's quite relevant as well, I think, anyway. I think it's all linked. A really big thing that stood out for me out, because we're not talking about school or anything, but just home. It's because of lockdown. I suppose as a family, we've tried to get out for daily walks going back 12 months. So the times where we are properly in lockdown, and I said, right, it's time for the walk, that's caused quite a lot of distress. So planning for that walk has been huge. And I mean, we ended up, I ended up taking my phone last time we went and taking about 40 photographs of the same walk that we do around Salewater Park, and putting that in its own folder in my camera so that he can have a look at all those photographs to remind him exactly what the walk looks like, and the order in which we do it, to remind him that I suppose there is a beginning, middle and end to it, because he can't seem to conceptualize or understand that it's ever going to end. I think that's what's hard for him. He's gone to high school this year, and he's got a TA from heaven, and school are brilliant, and now he knows where to look at his timetable every morning. At home, we look at it together every day to work out what he's got. We talk about what time he's going to finish school, even though I don't think he understands how, he's used to it now. I guess it's experience, isn't it? He knows there's 5 lessons. I guess that's how he works it out. So he knows that when he's on his 5th lesson, that's going to be the end of the day. And then after that, he knows it's home time.
Okay, so my name's Rhys. I'm autistic. I was diagnosed at age 12. So you could say in terms of time that I've been autistic now for about 34 years, but I was autistic before the diagnosis. So that's the first ode to the context, the concept of time right there. And that I always seemed to frustrate my parents by missing time somehow, by losing time, by not being able to, to make the lunches in 5 minutes time, an hour later, and gradually increasing high pitch of my mother shouting at me to come down and get off of my Commodore 64+4, where I was writing role-playing games in basic programming language. So I had all of these issues around timekeeping and time management. I was very late to time my shoelaces, and I was also one of the latest to be able to tell the time on an analog clock. And analog clocks used to really wind me up, no pun intended. I just didn't get them. And I learned to tell time by counting everything from the 12 o'clock and counting around. And I had to do it like that for a long time. And even now, it takes me quite a few seconds to work out the time on an analog clock. And I used to keep saying to my mother, it's wrong, it's wrong. And so she'd look at her digital clock and change it. And suddenly it was apparently telling the right time, but I would still insist that it was wrong. The time was wrong. And she used to get quite frustrated. And I didn't have the theory behind me, but I knew that it was wrong. And I believe now that what I was looking at, and bear in mind, we all work from the Gregorian calendar, and it's wrong. A year isn't 365 days full stop. It's 360 minutes and about I believe, and it causes a problem. And I think I knew that it was wrong. And it wasn't about that it was displaying the wrong time as the time is now. I just thought it was wrong. And I used to dream about it. I used to think, actually, would it be better if it had 13 hours? Would that correct it? And I used to become quite preoccupied with this conundrum. But perhaps the biggest issue that I have is time management. And even now, having a perception of time, I'm easily distracted. There are lots of time constraints that are put on you, whether it's to complete a particular task in an allotted time. And I've realized I cannot assess correctly. And I don't have a complete handle on why. Now, one of my big coping strategies is only do 2 things in any one day. And I only ever have 2 big tasks to do in any one day. And I set an alarm now on my phone. And the alarm is usually the thing that makes me jump 15 minutes before, and I go, oh wow, I forgot about that, because I'm off doing something else. I'm perhaps reading or researching or watching videos that have captured my interest, or I'm painting, or I may even, certainly I could lose a lot of time there. And often the only thing that gets me out of it now is having a mobile phone on me that sets off an alarm with a very strong, sometimes insulting message from me to me. So I've got my coping strategies, but then there's the other part of it, and it's the I don't give a stuff theory. And if I'm into something that I really want to be into, why would I stop it for something that just isn't interesting to me? Why would anyone? I don't understand that. And often the only reason people do is because they want to please someone, or they don't want to displease someone. It's that kind of battle between being impelled and compelled. They either really want to be liked and loved and please people, or they're focused on the fear aspect of not wanting to displease. I don't have that. So when you combine the perhaps the stuff that's happening at a perceptual level, with the process oriented stuff and the intrinsic stuff, I think those 3 come together and absolutely ruin me in terms of time success. And then there are other things which I believe are entirely sensory, but I've noticed it when let's say something simple like a ball is bouncing. I often thought it was an echo, but even in a place which is not echoing, I hear the things in a disconnected way. So and this disconnection can be quite substantial. So a ball bounces, and then I get a sound, and I don't think that can be wholly explained by acoustics in the sense of an echoey room. And often I'll hear the sound of the ball bouncing a long time after the ball has stopped. Thought about it ahead of talking to you, and I want to find out a little bit more about it. I don't know if that's a common issue. I don't know if there's been much research on that.